Born on May 29, 1927, in the wealthy town of Brookline, Massachusetts, John F. Kennedy was the 35th President of the United States of America. He was elected President on November 8, 1960, running for the Democratic Party, serving along with Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson. JFK served less than one term as President during 1961 and 1963. He was married to Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis and had three children named John F. Kennedy Jr., Carolyn Kennedy, and Patrick Bouvier Kennedy. At that moment of time, Kennedy became the youngest man and the first Roman Catholic to hold the presidency at age of 43. Kennedy was born into one of the wealthiest families in Boston and parlayed an elite education. His parents, Joseph and Rose Kennedy, were two of the most prominent Irish political families in Boston. JFK studied and graduated from Harvard's prestigious law school. However, Kennedy's real interest in politics and global affairs grew when Kennedy traveled around Europe as his father's secretary. Kennedy's summer trips to England to visit his father facilitated his interest in global issues and politics. On January 1, 1959, a young Cuban nationalist named Fidel Castro drove his guerrilla army into Havana and overthrew General Batista, the nation's American-backed president. For the next 2 years, officials at the U.S. State Department and the CIA attempted to push Castro from power. Finally, in April 1961, the CIA launched what its leaders believed would be the final strike, a full-scale invasion of Cuba by 1,400 American-trained Cubans who had fled their homes when Castro took over. This situation would later evolve into the Pig Bay invasion. It became a fiasco because every man on the beachhead was either killed or captured. Kennedy assumed sole responsibility for the setback. By the summer of 1962, the administration was in trouble. A particularly tricky Cold War climate abroad, an antagonistic Congress at home, increasingly bold activist groups agitating for change, and a dismal economic outlook all contributed to an increasingly negative view of the Kennedy White House. Privately, he told his father that he would never accept again a Joint Chiefs recommendation without first challenging it. Overall, this was a very negative setback towards Kennedy's presidency and a horrific moment that won't be forgotten by Americans anytime soon. One major event that created positive change was the speech made towards the first ever space mission to the moon. "We choose to go to the moon" is the famous tagline of this speech about the effort to reach the moon, delivered by President John F. Kennedy to a large crowd gathered at Rice Stadium in Houston, Texas on September 12, 1962. The speech was intended to persuade the American people to support the Apollo program national effort to land a man on the moon. He infused the address with a sense of urgency and destiny, and emphasized the freedom enjoyed by Americans to choose their future rather than have it selected for them. He proposed making the moon landing a joint project with the Soviet Union. The speech resonated widely and is still remembered, although at the time there was displeasure amongst the Americans about the cost and value of the moon landing effort. Kennedy's goal came to life in July 1969 with the successful Apollo 11 mission. While he would not live to see this achievement either, his advocacy of the space program contributed to the successful launch of the first American manned space flights. The mission became a massive success as JFK committed to being one of the first presidents ever to contribute to space exploration. Another major event in global conflict that took place during Kennedy's presidency was the Vietnam War. During his years as president, Kennedy tripled the amount of American economic and military aid to the South Vietnamese and increased the number of U.S. military advisors in Indochina. He refused to withdraw from the escalating conflict in Vietnam because he said to withdraw from that effort would mean a collapse not only of South Vietnam, but Southeast Asia, so we are going to stay there. Some historians allege that just weeks before Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas, he supported a military coup that overthrew and murdered South Vietnam President Ngo Dinh Diem. This is another positive historical and monumental moment for JFK, as he provided the proper support and aid at the time of war in order to help what would later occur as a military government in South Vietnam had been overthrown. Unfortunately, Kennedy was the third ever U.S. president to be assassinated, which took place on November 22, 1963 in Dallas, Texas. Although Kennedy seemed to have lived in a very American celebrity lifestyle, especially for a young president, he also confronted mounting Cold War tensions in Cuba, Vietnam, and elsewhere. He also led a renewed drive for public service and eventually provided federal support for the growing civil rights movement of African Americans. Although he was unable to achieve much of his proposed legislation during his lifetime, including two of his most significant priorities, income tax cuts and a civil rights bill, Overall, President JFK had created a great deal of positive change within America.